I asked my wife for birthday wish, her disappearing was requested. I vanished, cut every tie, and left a ruthless legal divorce surprise behind forever. You want to know what the worst birthday gift request sounds like? Let me tell you exactly what my wife told me when I asked her what she wanted for her birthday this year. We've been fighting for months. Every conversation turned into an argument. Every attempt I made to fix things got thrown back in my face. The house felt like a war zone where we were both walking on landmines, waiting for the next explosion. I was exhausted. She was exhausted, but I figured her birthday might be our chance to reset. Maybe if I could give her something she really wanted, we could find our way back to each other. So, 3 weeks before her birthday, after another silent dinner where we ate like strangers sharing a table, I decided to try one more time. I looked at her across the kitchen counter where she was washing dishes with more force than necessary. "What do you want for your birthday?" I asked. Simple question, reasonable question. She didn't even turn around, just kept scrubbing that same plate like she was trying to remove the pattern from it. "I don't know," she said, but her voice had that edge to it, that tone that told me we were about to go somewhere ugly. "Come on," I said, moving closer. "There has to be something. A trip, jewelry, that spa weekend you mentioned." She finally turned around, and the look on her face, I'd seen her angry before. I'd seen her frustrated, but this was something else. This was pure exhaustion mixed with something darker. "You really want to know what I want?" she said, her voice getting louder with each word. "Yes, tell me. You want to know what would make me truly happy for my birthday?" I nodded, thinking I was about to hear about some expensive gift or elaborate gesture I'd need to pull off. She looked me straight in the eye and said, "You disappearing would be my best birthday gift." The words hit me like a physical blow. Not because they were unexpected, our marriage had been falling apart for months, but because of how she said it, with such conviction, such relief, like she'd been holding this truth inside for so long, that finally saying it out loud felt like exhaling after holding her breath. "You disappearing would be my best birthday gift," she repeated, just to make sure I heard her correctly. "That's what I want, for you to just not be here anymore." I stood there in our kitchen, surrounded by the life we'd built together, and felt something inside me go completely cold. Not angry cold, not hurt cold, calculating cold. She turned back to the sink, apparently satisfied that she'd finally told me the truth. The silence stretched between us like a chasm that couldn't be bridged. But here's the thing about getting exactly what you ask for. Sometimes it comes in ways you never expected. I looked at her back as she continued washing dishes, probably feeling lighter now that she'd finally said what she really felt. And I made a decision right there in that kitchen. If disappearing was what she wanted for her birthday, then disappearing was exactly what she was going to get. But my kind of disappearing was going to come with a surprise she'd remember forever. "Okay," I said quietly. So quietly she probably thought I was just accepting defeat again. She had no idea I was accepting her challenge. The next morning, everything changed, but not in the way she expected. I woke up before my alarm, made coffee, and sat at the kitchen table like I always did. When she came downstairs, she looked almost lighter, like telling me she wanted me to disappear had lifted some invisible weight off her shoulders. "Morning," she said, actually making eye contact for the first time in weeks. "Morning," I replied, taking a sip of my coffee. She waited for me to say something about the night before, to apologize maybe, or to start another fight about how cruel she'd been. But I didn't give her either. Instead, I just nodded and said, "I heard you loud and clear." Something flickered across her face. Confusion, maybe. She'd been expecting drama, tears, or at least an argument. What she got was calm acceptance. Over the next few days, I stopped doing all the things that had been causing our fights. I stopped trying to plan date nights she didn't want. I stopped suggesting we talk through our problems. I stopped leaving little notes or bringing her coffee in the morning. She noticed. How could she not? But instead of being concerned, she seemed relieved. "You've been different," she said one evening as we passed each other in the hallway. "Have I?" I asked, not stopping to elaborate. "Yes. More, I don't know, peaceful. That's what she called it. When I stopped fighting for our marriage, when I stopped trying to save something she clearly didn't want saved. But I wasn't being peaceful. I was being strategic." While she was enjoying this new version of me that didn't pressure her or demand her attention, I was quietly taking care of business. I started organizing our financial records, making copies of important documents, and researching exactly what I'd need to do to disappear the way she wanted. I opened a separate bank account, just a small one at first, moving money in amounts too small for her to notice. I started keeping track of our shared expenses, our joint accounts, our mutual obligations. Every evening, while she watched TV or scrolled through her phone with that contented expression she'd been wearing since our kitchen conversation, I sat in my home office planning her birthday gift. The irony wasn't lost on me. Here I was, putting more effort into giving her what she wanted than I'd put into anything in months, and what she wanted was for me to not exist in her life. 2 weeks before her birthday, she actually started a conversation with me during dinner. "I was thinking," she said, picking at her salad, "maybe we should do something for my birthday this year." I looked up from my plate. "Oh yeah, maybe have some people over. Keep it simple." Simple, right? Because planning a party for the wife who wanted me to disappear was definitely simple. "Who were you thinking of inviting?" I asked. "You know, the usual crowd. My sister, a few friends from work, maybe some neighbors. The usual crowd. The same people who'd been watching our marriage deteriorate for months and probably taking bets on how long we'd last." "Sounds good," I said. "I can help organize it." She looked genuinely surprised. "Really? You don't mind?" "Mind? I was counting on it." "Not at all," I said. "It's your birthday. You should have exactly what you want." She smiled then. The first real smile I'd seen from her in months, and why wouldn't she smile? She told me she wanted me gone, and instead of fighting it, I was apparently making peace with it and even helping plan her party. What she didn't know was that I was planning to give her exactly what she asked for, just not when she expected it, and definitely not how she expected it. The party was going to be perfect. Absolutely perfect, because it was going to be my final performance before I honored her birthday wish and the surprise I was planning. She'd definitely remember it forever. Her birthday arrived on a Saturday. Perfect timing for a party and perfect timing for what I had planned. I woke up early and started preparations like I was the husband of the year. Decorations, food prep, making sure everything looked exactly how she'd wanted. She kept looking at me with this mix of surprise and suspicion, like she couldn't figure out why I was being so helpful. "You're really going all out," she said, watching me hang streamers in the living room. "It's your birthday," I replied. "Shouldn't be anything less than perfect." By afternoon, the house looked great. Food was ready. Drinks were chilled. Music playlist was set. I even wore the shirt she bought me last Christmas that I'd never worn because we'd been fighting when she gave it to me. The first guests arrived around 4 o'clock. Her sister showed up with her husband, followed by 3 of her work friends, then the neighbors from down the street. Everyone was in a good mood. And why wouldn't they be? Free food, free drinks, and front row seats to see how the couple who'd been having problems for months was doing. What they saw was a performance worthy of an Oscar. I was the perfect host, attentive, charming, making sure everyone had what they needed. I complimented her dress, brought her drinks, laughed at her stories. To anyone watching, we looked like a couple who'd worked through their problems and come out stronger. Her sister pulled me aside in the kitchen while I was refilling the ice bucket. "I have to say, you two seem really good together today," she said. "We're working on things," I replied, which wasn't technically a lie. "She seems happy. Happier than she's been in a while." Happy? Of course she was happy. She told me she wanted me gone. I'd stopped fighting her on everything. And now here I was throwing her a perfect party while apparently accepting that our marriage was over. Around 7, while everyone was gathered in the living room sharing birthday stories, I watched her from across the room. She was genuinely laughing, surrounded by people who cared about her, looking more relaxed than I'd seen her in months. This was her moment, her perfect birthday celebration with all the people she wanted there, in the house she loved, with the husband who was finally giving her what she wanted. I stepped outside onto the back patio for a moment. The evening air was cool and I could hear laughter through the windows. In a few hours, this would all be over. The guests would go home. She'd probably thank me for the party, and then we'd go to bed like a normal married couple. Except tomorrow, her real birthday gift would begin. When I came back inside, she was opening presents. Jewelry from her sister, a spa gift card from her work friends, a bottle of wine from the neighbors. She looked genuinely happy with everything. "Where's your gift?" her sister asked me. I smiled and looked at my wife. "I'm saving the best for last." She looked curious but not suspicious. Why would she be? I was being the perfect husband tonight. After the presents, we did cake and more drinks. By 10 o'clock, people started saying their goodbyes. Her sister hugged her and whispered something that made her laugh. Her work friends promised to take her out for lunch next week. The neighbors thanked us for a lovely evening. By 10:30, it was just the two of us. She started collecting plates and glasses, humming quietly to herself. "Thank you," she said without looking at me. "This was really nice. I'm glad you enjoyed it." "I did. I really did." She paused, holding a stack of plates. "Maybe we can do this more often. Have people over." Be social, like we were going to have a future full of dinner parties and game nights. Maybe, I said. She went upstairs to change while I finished cleaning up. When she came back down in her pajamas, she looked younger somehow, lighter. So, she said, settling onto the couch. You said you were saving the best for last. Where's my real present? I sat down next to her, close enough that she didn't pull away. Your real present? I said slowly. Starts tomorrow. Tomorrow? Remember what you told me you wanted for your birthday? Her expression changed slightly. The lightness flickered. What I said that night. I was angry. We were both angry. No, I said calmly. You were honest, maybe for the first time in months. She opened her mouth to say something, but I held up my hand. You wanted me to disappear. That's what you said would make you truly happy. The color drained from her face. So that's what I'm giving you, exactly what you asked for. I woke up at 5 o'clock in the morning. She was still sleeping, curled up on her side of the bed like she'd been doing for months, as far away from me as possible without falling off the mattress. Last night, after I told her about her real gift, she'd gone very quiet. Then she tried to backtrack, saying she didn't mean it, that she was just frustrated, that married couples say things they don't mean. But I'd stopped her right there. You meant it, I'd said, and I respect you enough to take you at your word. She'd gone to bed without another word. Now, in the gray light of early morning, I got dressed quietly and went downstairs to my office. Everything I needed was already prepared. Bank documents, copies of important papers, a list of contacts I'd need to reach. I'd spent 2 weeks setting this up. The separate account was funded and ready. I'd quietly moved my personal belongings, things that mattered to me anyway, to a storage unit across town. My clothes, my books, a few family photos. Not enough for her to notice, but enough so I wouldn't be starting from nothing. I wrote the note on plain white paper. No dramatic flourishes, no emotional appeals, just facts. You said you wanted me to disappear. You said it would be your best birthday gift. Consider your wish granted. Don't look for me. This is what you asked for. I left it on the kitchen counter where she'd find it when she came down for coffee. Then I took my keys, my wallet, and the single bag I'd packed the night before and walked out of the house we'd shared for 3 years. The morning air was crisp and quiet. No neighbors were awake yet. No traffic on our street. I got in my car and drove away from the life she'd told me she didn't want me in. I'd rented a small place on the other side of town under my new bank account. Nothing fancy, just a furnished studio that would work for what I needed. I'd paid 3 months up front in cash. By 7, I was settled in my temporary home, drinking coffee, and watching the sun come up through unfamiliar windows. I knew she'd be waking up soon. She'd come downstairs expecting to find me making coffee like I had every morning for 3 years. Instead, she'd find my note. My phone was off. I bought a new one yesterday with a different number. The old phone was in a drawer in my new place, but I wasn't ready to deal with whatever messages might be waiting. Around 9 o'clock, I turned it on briefly. 12 missed calls, 8 text messages. Where are you? This isn't funny. Come home so we can talk. You can't just leave. I didn't mean what I said. Please call me back. You're being ridiculous. Fine. Have your tantrum, but you'll be back. I turned the phone back off. She thought this was a tantrum, a dramatic gesture to get her attention or make her feel guilty. She had no idea this was just the beginning. Over the next few days, I established my new routine. I went to work like normal. I hadn't told anyone there what was happening. I ate meals alone, read books I'd been meaning to read, took walks in parts of town I'd never explored. It was quiet, peaceful even. Meanwhile, I knew she was probably cycling through the stages. First confusion, then anger, then maybe panic when she realized I wasn't coming back after a day or two like she expected. On Thursday, 5 days after I disappeared, I drove past our house on my way home from work. Her car was there, but so was her sister's. Reinforcements had been called in. I didn't stop. Friday, I checked my old phone again. 23 missed calls now. The text messages had gotten more desperate. Everyone's asking where you are. I told them we had a fight, but you'll be back. How long are you going to keep this up? I'm starting to get worried. Okay, I'm sorry. Is that what you want to hear? This is crazy. Just come home. Worried. Now she was worried. But this was what she'd asked for. Me gone from her life. Her exact words were that it would make her truly happy. I was just making sure she got the full experience of what she'd requested. The real surprise was still coming. By the second week, the panic had fully set in. I knew because her sister started calling my work. My secretary mentioned that someone had been asking for me, claiming to be family, wanting to know if I was okay. Should I be concerned? She asked me Monday morning. No, I said, just some personal drama. Nothing that affects work. Personal drama. That's what our marriage had become. I also knew she'd been to the police. A friend of mine who works dispatch mentioned they'd had someone file a missing person report that got dismissed pretty quickly. Guy just walked out after a fight with his wife, he said, over beers Thursday night. Happens all the time. They told her unless there's evidence of foul play, it's not really missing if he left voluntarily. He had no idea he was talking about me. The old phone now had 47 missed calls and more text messages than I cared to count. The tone had shifted from angry to desperate to something approaching genuine fear. I found your note. We need to talk. I know you're getting these messages. Your boss says you're still working. Why won't you come home? I'm sorry, okay, I shouldn't have said that. People are starting to ask questions. I don't know what to tell them. Please just call me. 5 minutes, I'm scared something happened to you. This isn't what I wanted. That last one made me laugh, not what she wanted. She'd been very specific about what she wanted. Friday of the second week, I decided it was time for phase 2. I'd been patient. I'd given her the full experience of having me disappear from her life. She'd gotten exactly what she asked for. 2 weeks without me around, without my presence, without having to deal with me at all. Now she needed to understand what that really meant. I drove to the house at lunchtime when I knew she'd be at work. Using my key, I went inside to collect a few more things, but more importantly, I left some documents on the kitchen table. Divorce papers already filled out, already signed by me, along with copies of our financial records showing how I'd quietly separated our accounts over the past month. How I'd moved my direct deposit to my new bank. How I'd removed my name from utilities, subscriptions, anything that tied me to that house. I also left the house keys, car keys to the car that was in both our names but that I'd been making the payments on, credit cards that I'd already canceled. And one more note, you got what you wanted, me gone. But disappearing means disappearing completely. The financial support disappears, the shared responsibilities disappear. Everything I brought to this marriage disappears, just like you requested. When she got home from work and found everything waiting for her, she'd realize this wasn't a tantrum or a dramatic gesture. This was me honoring her birthday wish with surgical precision. I went back to my studio and waited. The phone started ringing at 6:47 p.m. I let it ring. By 7:30, there were already 6 new voicemails. You can't just file for divorce without talking to me. This is insane. Come home so we can work this out. You can't take away everything and just leave. I never asked for this. You're being cruel. Please, we can fix this. But she had asked for this. She'd been very clear about it. She'd wanted me to disappear. She'd wanted her life to be better without me in it. Now she was getting the chance to find out if she was right. 3 weeks after her birthday, she finally found a way to reach me. I was at my new place on a Saturday evening when there was a knock at my door. I looked through the peephole, and there she was, looking like she hadn't slept in days. Her hair was pulled back messily, and she was still wearing her work clothes from yesterday. I opened the door but didn't invite her in. We need to talk, she said. Do we? Don't do this. Don't act like you don't know why I'm here. I leaned against the doorframe. She looked around at my small studio, taking in the basic furniture and the boxes I still hadn't unpacked. You filed for divorce, she said. I did, without even discussing it. What was there to discuss? You made your feelings pretty clear. Her hands were shaking as she crossed her arms, trying to look more composed than she felt. I was angry when I said that. People say things when they're angry. You weren't angry, I said calmly. You were honest, maybe for the first time in months. That's not true, is it? When was the last time you were actually happy to see me come home? When was the last time you looked forward to spending time with me? When was the last time you didn't act like my presence was an inconvenience? She opened her mouth to answer, then closed it. I gave you exactly what you asked for, I continued. You wanted me to disappear. I disappeared. You wanted your life to be better without me. Here's your chance to prove it. I can't afford the house payments alone, she said quietly. That's not my problem anymore. The utilities, the car payment, the insurance, all things you'll need to figure out now that you have the independence you wanted. She stared at me like I was a stranger, which, in a way, I guess I was. This isn't what I meant, she said. What did you mean then? When you said you wanted me to disappear, what exactly did you think that looked like? I don't know. I thought maybe we'd separate for a while, get some space, work on ourselves, while you continued paying for everything, while you waited around hoping I'd decide you could tolerate me again. That's exactly what you expected. You wanted all the benefits of not having me around with none of the consequences of actually not having me around. My neighbors were probably getting an earful of this conversation, but I didn't care. I've been thinking about what you said, she continued, about how I acted. You're right. I was taking you for granted. Were you? Or did you just realize that having me gone meant having to handle everything yourself? She flinched. I can change, she said. I'm sure you can, but not with me. Why not? I looked at her standing there in my doorway, 3 weeks after she'd gotten exactly what she asked for, now desperate to undo it. Because you killed something when you said what you said. You didn't just tell me you wanted space or that you needed time. You told me that your life would be better if I didn't exist in it. I didn't mean it like that. You meant it exactly like that. And you know what? Maybe you were right. Maybe your life will be better without me. Now you get to find out. She was crying now, which was more emotion than I'd seen from her in months. Please, she said. We can go to counseling. We can work on this. No, I said simply. We can't. I stepped back and started to close the door. You're really going to throw away 3 years of marriage over one thing I said? I paused with the door half closed. I'm not throwing anything away. I'm just honoring your birthday wish. You said disappearing would be your best gift. I made sure you got exactly what you asked for. Wait, she said, putting her hand against the door. Please don't do this. I looked at her one more time. The difference between us is this. When you said you wanted me gone, you meant it. When you say you want me back, you're just scared of the consequences of getting what you wanted. I closed the door and locked it. She stood outside for another 10 minutes, occasionally knocking and saying my name. Then I heard her footsteps walking away. 2 days later, the signed divorce papers arrived by mail. She'd made her choice, just like I'd made mine the night she told me her birthday wish. Sometimes you get exactly what you asked for, and sometimes that's the last thing you actually wanted. Our story has come to an end.